They told me I was forgotten. They told me I was replaced. They told me the enemy had a foreign name, a darker skin, a different prayer, a different face. They said, "White man, wake up. Nobody listens to you, except Nigel Farage and the far right." And for a moment, I listened. I am the white British, born in the rain, carrying silence, carrying pain. They told me my hunger had an immigrant name, but I looked at the rich and I saw the game. I am the white British, but I'm not your knife, I'm not your headline, I'm not your fight. I am the white British, I see it tonight. They use my pain just to turn out the light. From the coast to the estates, I've seen people fall. Rent too high, wages too small. Mum checks the meter, dad hides the stress. Another cold morning, another red letter mess. They said, blame the stranger, blame the boat, blame the accent, blame the coat. And when you're broke, anger feels true, but lies sound sweet when they're aimed at you. Who cut the care? Who sold the homes? Who left the working people alone? Who points at the migrant when the bills arrive? Who profits when the poor divide? Night bus home, headphones low, cleaner beside me after a double shift slow, nurse on the platform, driver before dawn, different colors, same tired yawn. White hands, brown hands, black hands too, all of us tired, all pushing through. Same rent due, same cheap meal, same old system turning the wheel. They told me immigrants stole my place, but I saw the boss with a smiling face, cutting my hours, raising the pace, then blaming a stranger for my disgrace. I am the white British, born in the rain, carrying silence, carrying pain. They told me my hunger had an immigrant name, but I looked at the rich and I saw the game. I am the white British, but I'm not your knife, I'm not your headline, I'm not your fight. I'm the white British, I see it tonight. They use my pain just to turn out the light. From the docks to the red brick mills, I've seen empty shops and unpaid bills. Granddad said, lad, don't lose your soul when rich men laugh and poor men roll. Nigel Farage and the far right crowd spoke my pain and spoke it loud, but speaking pain is not the same as healing wounds or changing the game. They dress their promises in red, white, blue, but what do those promises really do? Private answers, public pain, poor get poorer in the rain. Now AI comes with a corporate grin, a brand new machine with an old world sin. They replace the worker, not the king. Then tell us migrants caused everything. I am white, I am British, but my greatness is not hatred. It is tolerance, it is liberty, it is freedom, it is mercy when anger is easy, it is courage when division is profitable. My flag is not a weapon, my pain is not your campaign, my poverty is not your ladder, my anger is not your throne. From the valleys where the old songs rise, I hear tired people asking why. Why does the clinic close so soon? Why does hope feel like a borrowed room? Don't give me hatred dressed as pride, don't put a border inside my mind. My neighbor's prayer is not my chain, my neighbor's skin is not my pain. I am against the haters, against the dividers, against rich men hiring poor men as fighters. Let's make Britain great with science, not silence. Technology, not fear. Education, not division. Mercy, not suspicion. Diversity is not weakness. Inclusion is not shame. A country is not broken because people have different names. I am the white British, born in the rain, carrying silence, carrying pain. They told me my hunger had an immigrant name, but I looked at the rich and I saw the guy. White British, I choose what is right, I won't be led by fear tonight. Black, brown, Muslim, Christian, Jew, different stories, same pain too. One street, one road, one hand, one fight. Bring Britain back with truth and light. I am the white British. Not because I hate, because I remember tolerance, liberty, freedom. I will not let anyone turn my suffering into someone else's punishment. I am the white British, and I am not your weapon.
Welcome to the Shit Show. My name's Andrea Edwards.
My name is David Coe.
And today, bottom left, we have me, Richard Bussolato.
My name is David Coe.
And my name is Joe Augustin. And as Andrea said, welcome to the show, the only program that keeps proving the phrase, things can't possibly get any weirder, is less of a prediction and more of a challenge. It's Friday, it's 3 p.m., and once again, the world has dumped a week's worth of bad decisions, geopolitical drama, and existential dread into our laps. Turns out you change your underwear almost as often as the UK changes prime ministers, but perhaps I'm just revealing too much about my underwear buying habits. Either way, Britain appears to be treating political leadership like it's a free trial subscription. Today, we're asking whether the UK has become fundamentally ungovernable in an era where every issue is immediately transformed into a culture war, a conspiracy, or a TikTok dance. We'll look at the resignation of Keir Starmer and Andy Burnham circus, Brexit 10 years on, Nigel Farage's seemingly immortal political career, media influence, think tanks, and where Britain still has a political, and whether, I beg your pardon, Britain still has a political center, or whether it's simply become two groups of people shouting, "You're destroying the country," at each other, while the country's quietly catching fire in the background. Then, apparently that's not enough anxiety for one afternoon. We'll be moving on to AI, cybersecurity, the Five Eyes warning that frontier AI could supercharge cyber attacks, and the possibility of an AI Chernobyl moment, because nothing says Happy Friday quite like the phrase existential technological catastrophe. To help us separate genuine international failure from the usual political theater, we're joined by someone who's spent her career working at the intersection of technology, government, cybersecurity, regulation, trust, and public policy. It's a big junction. She's advised at the highest levels, led major national cyber initiatives, has repeatedly been recognized as one of the UK's most influential people in technology, and somehow still remains enough optimistic. I beg your pardon. Where's the English in this? But somehow still retains enough optimism to talk about politics in public. Would you please give a warm shit show welcome to Jessica Figueras?
Hey, so who is this person? I'd love to meet her. She sounds great.
It's all true. So
Round of
the
applause.
opening video, Jess, what did you think?
Oh, really powerful. Yeah, very moving actually. Yeah. I hadn't seen it.
Yeah, it popped up on X this week, and I said to Joe, we've got to include it because I just think it speaks to so many aspects of this time, right? Yeah. But anyway, so it's good to have you back, mate.
Lovely to be here.
And Jess and I go way back. We're almost at our 30-year anniversary, and I know that's hard to believe. But we used to work together in London a long time ago, and Jess was my political teacher of UK politics. Did you know that?
Yeah, that's kind of worrying. I mean, it's hard to believe. I mean, clearly we were both 5 years old when we worked together, you know, all those
Early.
Yeah.
And all Jessica thought was just buying you drinks, but you were getting an education out of the whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, it was such a different time, right? I mean, we look back now at the mid-90s as the time of absolute unprecedented kind of political stability, you know. It's just incredible how things have changed.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. All right. So I know you haven't got all the time in the world, so I'm gonna feature you. But just to give everyone, because not everyone's met you before, just some insight on your professional background before we kick off with the politics bit.
Yeah, sure. So I started off as a tech industry analyst and done many things over the years. Right now, I run a non-profit which educates boards and non-executive directors in cybersecurity, doing quite a lot of work with government on policy development around national resilience. I also sit on the board of the University of Westminster, which is a really great London university. And I'm also doing strategy consultancy for cyber and tech firms, particularly those working with government.
Yeah, nice. You forgot the pre-IT research roles where we actually met.
Yeah, don't talk about that.
No. Okay, so you've been involved in politics and interested in politics for a really long time. We were talking before about how you were dancing around the office when the Thatcher era finally ended in '97. But you've always taken it seriously. So when you think about what's happened in the last couple of decades since we met, what's changed most in your opinion?
Yes, I think the big turning point in the UK was Brexit, right? So we're marking the 10-year anniversary right now of the vote, the referendum to leave the EU. And I think what that did was that brought various kind of simmering tensions to the surface in a way that has really kind of fractured politics ever since. I think if you look back to the time before the referendum, what you had was a kind of two-party system in Britain, where you had two very big parties, established parties. You had Labour and the Conservatives, and they were actually both quite diverse coalitions. The Conservative Party had every flavour of opinion on the right, to the and the Labour Party on the same on the left. So they were both kind of big tents, and they both also to different extents cut across age groups, across different demographics. Although you certainly did have so they were both big tents to some extent. And what Brexit did was it created this fault line, which has really been amplified by social media, which we've really been struggling with ever since. It's led to an era of hugely polarized politics. And what we find now is that the way that people voted in that Brexit referendum still have a huge impact on their views on many, many different political topics today. So I think that's difficult. I think also the fact the economy is stagnated, and this goes back to the financial crash 2008. So you've got these kind of two shocks really. The first, economic stagnation. 2008, essentially British productivity stopped growing. So there are a whole bunch of people, younger people who have never really experienced very much economic growth at all. And of course, that does something to a country, doesn't it? It does something to the psyche. It sort of saps optimism out of the vibes. And then you add to that this kind of huge new fault line introduced by Brexit. And I think this goes a long way to explain why British politics has become so dysfunctional.
All right, so then we come to this week where we've got how many prime ministers in a decade? 6 or something?
Yeah.
So
decade.
the whole the social media side, the 2008 financial crisis, we've talked about it before, we're still suffering the implications. But the resignation of Keir Starmer. So what are your thoughts? Why do you think it happened? I'll be interested to hear what everybody else thinks too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible tragedy, isn't it? I think many people, I'm sure across political divides, were really hoping that after so much instability over the COVID years, where we'd had 3 prime ministers in short succession, we'd had Boris Johnson, Liz Truss and Sunak. I think many people were really, really hoping that Starmer kind of coming in with a kind of very established background in public service, seemed like a very serious individual. would kind of restore some of that stability that many of us really kind of missed in British politics. And certainly that was the narrative. Okay, Starmer talked very explicitly about this is what he wanted to bring. And there were all sorts of expectations, like people were talking about, well, maybe this time we can go for like a whole parliament with the same cabinet ministers, because that's another thing which really drives instability. When your health secretary changes every year, they never have time to get on top of any of the problems in British policy. So we were really hoping for that kind of stability, and I think it's just a huge disappointment, really, that it went so badly wrong quite so quickly. I guess, sort of looking at some of the factors there, I think personality has been a huge part. I mean, back in the day, we used to talk about how politicians needed to be great performers for TV. Now it's even more pressure now with social media. They need to be great performers for, the 5-second video clip on social media. And, Starmer is a very wooden performer. He comes across as not just uncharismatic, but uncharismatic, not necessarily in a nice kind of friendly cuddly way, so that's been a really big deal.
But such a gift to SNL.
Yeah.
And then also I think there's this kind of weird he came in trying to do expectation management, because he came in facing a really, like a very, very objectively difficult situation with an economy that's not growing. It's like there's no money, to fix stuff. This is the big difference with 97. We were talking about 97 earlier, weren't we, when Tony Blair came in? Tony Blair was probably one of the, highest performing politicians of our time, probably however, we do overlook the fact that he came in at a time when the economy was growing really, really quickly. There was loads of money to do stuff and to fix problems. So Starmer did not have that. So he came in trying to kind of manage expectations. And so what he did was he ended up adopting a very, very negative tone about everything, and he came in kind of warning that, things were bad and they were going to get worse, and the problem with that is you keep saying it, people believe it. It feeds this really gloomy kind of political atmosphere, which is absolutely toxic, and then there were just so many unforced political errors. I guess his premiership has been characterized by attempts to make tough decisions which upset a lot of people and then are reversed. So you haven't you've achieved worse than nothing. You've upset a lot of people and you haven't even done the reform you said you would. So it's been a real shame, and here we are again.
Absolutely.
Richard, do you want to jump in?
No, I mean, we have discussed it briefly before, these kind of situations that you're describing, and I think you're really ramming home the message that we've tried to convey, albeit not as well structured as you do. I think he's not an obviously charismatic character, but that can work in your favor in certain moments. But if you have tough decisions to make, which Labour undoubtedly had 2 years ago, it was a very dire situation, you need to give people a ray of hope. So say it's going to be tough now, but it's going to be better. Not it's like it's going to be tough now and then we don't know if we need to do more. It's like you clean the deck, you ram home every single tough political decision you have to take, because you got the parliamentary majority that most people dream of in a lifetime. And if your MPs are not towing that line, you call them up and you say, then I'm calling a new general election. Do you want to keep your job or not? Because we need to do this. And then you move on with the carrot of it's going to get better.
I think that's right. Although, I mean, just to pick up something, you're right about the parliamentary majority. It was absolutely thumping. But, very, very fragile, because the British parliamentary system, as you know, is very, very odd. We have, it's a real anachronism in that we still have this first past the post system, And so what that does is it really disguises the fact that that Starmer's government was elected by about somewhere around a third of voters.
Yeah.
That's a
34% or
really,
something.
yeah, it's a very, very fragile place to be, you know. So
Yeah, compulsory
I mean,
voting, compulsory.
yeah,
No,
yeah. That is actually that's being argued for in the UK. I think I'd be absolutely all for it. I think it's and yeah, the calls for a more proportional system are very loud at the moment, and that is also because Britain is in an era genuinely of multi-party politics now. I mean, the Green Party reform obviously all made a really good showing. So yeah, no more two-party system.
yeah,
No, that's gone. I think that has
yeah.
been absolutely harpooned, largely by what you're describing.
Yeah.
Brexit played an enormous role in forging this multifaceted palette of political voices, because both parties, I mean, the Tories basically cleansed everyone who was not a Brexiteer and largely lost any kind of sense and economic know-how. And Labour did the same, because they didn't really want to get involved in the issue of having a Brexit re-referendum of any sort. And that obviously was a mistake if you're part of these two parties, because now you're never ever going to get back to where you effectively had one enemy and it was very easy to identify it, and you run politics along those lines. Now it's very different. Labour's in a horrific situation because they're leaking votes on all angles because they don't have a coherent message.
I mean you're right in that the Conservative split was around Brexit, absolutely, and it left a Conservative Party which was hugely weakened, like you say, by the loss of its kind of moderate, its pro-European voices. In Labour, the split wasn't around Brexit, it was more around sort of social demographics. So what you found in Labour now is that it tends to be the younger, more socially progressive members who have left for the Greens, plus what we used to call the hard left. Most of those people have now found a home in the Greens. What Labour is now, I would say it's I mean, it's pretty kind of centrist. It's a fairly representative demographic, in all honesty. If you look in terms of you compare the Labour MPs now in their sort of policy stances, it's really not far off where the British public is, you know. So, which is interesting because Starmer just has not been able to channel that at all.
I think there were a couple of comments you were talking about was his charisma, and that's something that's come up again and again in the media, and the idea that our leaders can't be serious people; they have to be salespeople, right? Which absolutely kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it's kind of a bit frustrating because we're in a serious time and we need serious leaders and we need adults in the room. But the other thing I think, Richard, you were saying is, you know, and you were saying as well, Jess, is about, you know, he was just constantly sharing bad news and not giving hope. And what concerns me about that is that we do have bad news coming one way or another, not just from a country perspective, but from a climate perspective, right? And so these sort of angles sort of concern me, because we do need leaders to be honest about the situation that we're in. But everyone's saying, but you've got to give us hope. And it's like, you know, if we don't change anything, and the only way we're going to change stuff is to take it seriously, how dangerous everything is, the situation we're in. You guys are sitting there sweltering in the heat as we speak, right?
Absolutely.
You know, and we're looking at the escalation of so many extreme events. I don't know if you saw Taiwan's, you know, getting flooded at the moment. We've obviously had the earthquakes, but, you know, there's big things coming down the path, and we need serious leaders who can tell the truth, and it's not good news. And charisma, so someone who can tell bad news with charisma, you know. So
it's a tough ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I really liked about Starmer, and I think this is a general problem in modern politics, is here you actually had someone with real life experience having done a proper job outside of politics. He wasn't someone who took, politics at university and decided this is a great way to further my career and then I can move on from there and earn mega bucks consulting for various firms. He actually had a proper job, a real job. And you look around global politics now, there are actually very, very few people like that. Most of these guys and girls that are running the show, they're career politicians having laid out their path as teenagers. I don't think that's healthy at all. It's as far away as you possibly can from the people we need in charge, because you need to have real life experience.
Yeah, I'm going to say something perhaps which is not very popular, because instinctively I'd like to agree with you. I'm not sure there is a correlation between somebody's background and how good they are a politician. I'm not too sure. I mean, we've seen with Starmer, right? I'm not sure if there is a correlation. I mean, there are so many different factors, aren't there? There's luck, timing, the circumstances you inhabit. So
one of the pieces I read was talking about Starmer, that he's had a successful career, but he's always been successful, and he's sort of stepped up and stepped up and stepped up, and he's never had any negative experiences. He's never failed. And so basically the argument is that's why someone who gets to the top without failure and challenge and diverse, all that adversity, that's a problem. Ollie's saying you can't make people vote. I disagree as an Australian. You can't make people vote, or you fine them, but you can theoretically oblige attendance at what do you guys think about compulsory voting, Jess? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I mean, if you look at the Brexit referendum, a third of people didn't vote in that. Hugely consequential. It would have been really interesting to see what they would have done. The commenter is right in that, you can't force people to vote. You can oblige them to turn up at a polling station, and you can give them an option of saying none of the above, or I think very often democratic decisions are made or driven by a small number of highly motivated people.
Exactly.
And I think that has been the pattern, hasn't it, of the last 10 plus years. We've had the extremes really, really dividing politics all over the world, driving things. We've seen it in the States, everywhere. And it's been massively amplified by social media. Social media has this effect of creating polarized opinions. I think, frankly, if we forced the unengaged and ambivalent back into the room, I think that could only be a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. I see the interviews like with young people in the UK, and they're like, I'm so lost, I'm in so much despair, and they don't vote, so they're not participating in their future, and I feel this deep frustration about it. But one of the things that's been happening this last week in particular.
Well, I think that's the point. I mean,
go, David. Oh,
did we lose him?
No, I don't know.
No, he's here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think there are two things that I don't know. My laptop is suffering from the heat. So just to illustrate how a little bit of heat changes your productivity. Is really kind of appropriate and timely. It's only 8:30 in the morning, and I can't get it to work properly at all because of the heat.
Wow.
But I was going to say the two things kind of associated. One is we're in tough times, and tough times means that what you try don't always work. And if you have to change leader every time because what you're trying doesn't work, you're never going to get it forward. But the mentality is, if anything goes wrong, we have to cancel whoever the leader is. People have to resign. And that's going to be the worst situation you're going to find as you go forward. And until we change that mentality, what we're going to find is we're going to be wasting all the political interest the population has of being involved. Because it's just going to flip from one thing to another. There's not going to be any possibility of consistency, and it's the politicians themselves. They're trying to get it or whatever it is, and they're using every opportunity to try to sit down, the other guy down, or whatever it might be. And the result of that is we're going to find fewer and fewer people interested in voting in that way.
Yeah.
And the other side about voting is the fact that if the people are not voting, they're disengaged, and they're choosing to be disengaged because they just don't see any bloody point.
Yeah.
And we are in that sort of situation. Our political democracy cannot solve the problems we have. Colombia just had an election where the winning party won by 250,000 votes in a population of 54 million people.
Yeah.
And the whole course is now going to flip from a left-wing government to a Trumpist right-wing government on 250,000 votes. 50% turnout on this. And the result of this flip-flopping is you're just going to get fewer people interested.
Yeah. It's got that Bekele or whatever his name is, the guy from El Salvador's potential as well, to do with the violence and the drug lords and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's a big shift. But one of the things I was going to say is
it's a silence, but that's it. That's not my laptop.
The media coverage and social commentary is obviously something I've been trying to pay attention to, because I have my perspective of Keir Starmer and what I think, but I've wanted to sort of listen to what other people are saying, right? And it's like the eulogizing, which often happens after a British PM is out. Even Liz Truss got a bit of eulogizing, or he's the worst person on earth. So, but the bigger point is there's no centre in the conversation, and that's what we were talking about, the extremes. And this is something that really concerns me. So, Jess, what are we to make of all of that?
So I think that with Starmer, I wouldn't say that it's been polarized, the reaction to him. So if we compare him, for example, to Boris Johnson, Johnson had a very, very polarized reception. You definitely found people absolutely loved him or they loathed him. And by the way, he's still seen like that as well, even today. I think Truss had barely any fans. She did have some, particularly but Starmer's fans are very, very few and far between, so the narrative has mainly been very negative. And what's interesting is you will talk to kind of political commentators, political journalists from all sides of the spectrum, left and right, and they will all tell you that they are shocked by the hostility of the reaction to him and the kind of the level of vitriol. They say that campaigning politicians also hear it on the doorsteps as well. And they all say that this is really quite unprecedented. They didn't hear this in response to any of the previous candidates, even Truss, which is amazing because Truss was spectacularly bad. So I find this really interesting. What is driving that? I wonder potentially part of it is that disappointment, like we said, the sixth Prime Minister in 10 years. Everybody was hoping that this time would be different, and it was different, but not in a way that it made anyone happy and cheerful, I think, but also it's partly what's happened on X, right? What used to be Twitter. I think that more than any other kind of media outlet, I think X is probably responsible for that, and that's simply because since 2022 was it when Musk took over and sacked all the moderators. X has become extremely it's become a platform where extremist points of view are aired and massively amplified by Musk himself as well.
And you guys are definitely victims of that. So one of the other things that kept coming up, and he even said it in his resignation speeches, we stamped out the anti-Semitism, and I know that's a Corbyn sort of critique, which was also, if you look at, my perception is that was a manipulation in the background as well. So I know it's a delicate topic and not everyone wants to talk about it, but what's that whole Israeli side of the story got? I know that the British, just like most countries, you've got the Palestinian Action Group as a terrorist organization, and people have been going to grandmas are going to jail. Like there's all that sort of side of things. Do you think that played a big part in what's going on?
Yeah, it's interesting what's happened with this, isn't it? So anti-Semitism in Britain used to be something that was very associated with the far right, but what's changed there is the far right has become, well, since over the last kind of 25 years or so, the far right has become much more preoccupied with Islam. So so the far right now is very explicitly anti-Islam, and we see that in levels of violence and you know, anti-Islam and Islamophobic incidents. It's really quite horrific. What you get is this in politics is this crazy notion of my enemy's enemy is my friend. Okay, and so this is what drives these mad kind of coalitions. So now, you know, if you look at your kind of typical far right rhetoric, it's become kind of pro-Israeli, pro-Jewish. You know, there's a lot of kind of talking up of the so you have these kind of weird coalitions, and over the same time, anti-Semitism has become more associated with the far left rather than the far right, and of course that's because you know, the British left has in recent decades been kind of very concerned with what's happening in Gaza and the plight of the Palestinians. And it's been observed you get this kind of bleed where anti-Zionism, which is seen as you might not like it, but I mean it's a political point of view. It becomes kind of conflated with anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
So this has been this was a problem for Labour at times, and like you said, I guess kind of concerns and complaints really grew during the Corbyn era. It's hard to kind of I mean, I wouldn't really like to venture a view on that because obviously it's really controversial. These are very emotive topics. It depends on where you stand. It does seem, though, that anti-Semitic incidents do spike in line with developments in the Far East. So there is obviously a connection in the UK. And what's really hugely concerning is there's been a massive explosion in anti-Semitism since in the last kind of 3 years. I mean, there have been more incidents since records began. There have been some really quite horrific attacks in Britain in the last couple of years. Kind of anti-Semitic, sort of fatal attacks. So it was, we've had the kind of Manchester attack, Golders Green. So actually, to be fair to Starmer, he did do a really good job of kind of closing the book on that in Labour since he was elected leader. It is a job sometimes for leaders, new leaders of political parties. They do have a job of kind of cleaning out the stables, and this was Starmer's job. And I think it's been very successful. I mean, he couldn't avoid it, you know, although I think elements of the hard left in the Labour Party saw it as very unfair. You know, they felt that there wasn't any anti-Semitism, that there were just violent, that there were just legitimate concerns about Zionism. However, you know, there have been a formal report by the EHRC, so the Commission on Human Rights in the UK, which had found the Labour Party culpable for anti-Semitism, for creating a culture in which that kind of behaviour was seen as acceptable. So, you know, Starmer had to do it, I think, and yeah, good on him.
All right. That's a perspective I haven't heard before. So that's really interesting. So Andy Burnham, by all accounts, looks like he's going to be the new Prime Minister. There was a big spectacle as his train arrived into one of the stations, Euston or something. They had helicopters in the air on an extreme heat day. It was just like, oh, okay, paying attention. But also the other side of things is negative media attention is also starting to ramp up. So it sort of asks the question, like in Australia, 70% of the media is dominated by Murdoch. And we're seeing what's happening there with bloody Pauline Hanson. But is he going to just be facing the same stuff? Is his northern sort of local sort of working class sort of connections going to help? Or is the Murdoch effect and the far right effect going to make it impossible for him to do the job too? And is he charismatic enough, do you think?
Goodness, that's unanswerable. I mean, he certainly has kind of carved out a very distinctive role for himself since he became Manchester mayor. He's been absolutely comfortable in his skin. I think that comes across. We call him the king of the north. I mean, it's said that people genuinely like him, and he's an unusual politician in that he genuinely likes people as well. You hear that he absolutely loves walking around and talking to anybody about anything. He is genuinely popular. I guess the question is, can you, from being a very, very successful local politician, can you translate that to the national stage? Manchester is his backyard, his stamping ground. Really by anybody's standards, he's done really, really great things in Manchester. It's been a huge success story. He's created that kind of sense of dynamism, that sort of optimism that we would love to see at a national level. I mean, I love going to Manchester. It's just got a real energy about the place, but can that translate? Clearly he can't just be seen just as, for the north, because country's got a north, south, east and west, right? Just the kind of problems you have to fix are just, they're different, they're bigger, they're more complicated, there are international dimensions. Perhaps the biggest thing is that until now he was able to succeed because there was always a kind of common enemy he could point to. Arguably Burnham's finest hour was actually during the COVID pandemic, when he came out absolutely fighting about how the north was being treated by the national government. I mean, that was really when he went viral, so to speak, and people loved it. He was a really powerful speaker. Now, as Prime Minister, I'm not sure you can do that. Who are you going to pick as a target? It's pretty tough. Many people would absolutely love him to pick Trump. that would be a wildly popular move, but I mean, few other politicians nationally have managed that. Maybe Spain, Pedro Sanchez has managed it, hasn't he? But it's
risky strategy, though.
It's a risky strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to get back in though. His numbers aren't that great, but media coverage. How divided is the media over there? I think that's something that people outside of the UK might not value as much. David, do you want to, Jess? I'm going to bring you on.
I think there's a problem before that. I think there's a problem before that. I think UK currently faces a situation that what people want the government to do is going to cost the tax that they're going to have to pay. And what part of the problem that Keir Starmer has been sort of facing, why he doesn't get the popular support, is that people don't want to accept that they are the one who's going to have to pay it. They think there's some other guy who's going to pay it. So if you look at that, if you think about what the change in kind of like the property rating for the council tax and all the rest of it, or every level of the increment in taxing, the effect of the change in the self-assessment regime, where you now have to pay up front effectively for people, but actually what it is catching up with PAYE, but people seeing is having to pay up front. So what happens is it's trying to match everything back up. As a result, a lot of people are finding that they are having to pay more, and or at a timing that they're not expecting before, and myself included in that way, and people don't like it, and Andy Burnham or whoever it is not going to make any difference to that. Plenty of people I know are now hopping between, counting days between sort of countries as a way to try and find that residue. And more people I know are doing that. And so, the idea that somehow there's a tax block that can get is not going to be there. And at the end of the day, the problem that Keir Starmer faced was that he had to deal with the fact that he had to raise taxes, and people don't like it. For all the rest about the politics and all the rest about charisma and all the rest of it, what he actually did is to raise tax. It cost people more. In one form or another, it cost people more. And the way he actually went about it may not have been the best way of going about it, but if you're going to face the reality of what it is, which is people want services, people want those sort of things, they're going to have to pay. And you're finding people instead, increasing number of them, are trying to find ways to get out of the country and stay in it at the same time.
Yeah, the rich people. Yeah. So I just want to, because I'm looking. I'm just sorry, David. I'm just looking at the time, and I'm aware of how much time Jess has got, and there's another topic that I want to talk before we finish. But I mentioned media in its influence, but the other thing that's really influential in the UK is think tanks and their power. I just wanted to get Jess's view on that, or if she wants to respond to David as well, that's fine.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so the role of think tanks really is to develop policy. And they've traditionally been really, really important in British politics, because I mean, politics and policy are two different things. We often forget that. My interest has always been on the policy side. I mean, really, to me, politics was the kind of grubby business which one had to endure in order to, deliver good policy, hopefully. In recent years, the policy has absolutely been drowned out in favour of the politics. But yeah, I mean, politicians, that's what they have to focus on, right? They have to focus on the politics. They have to focus on getting elected and staying elected. And I hate to say it, because I dare say almost everybody goes into politics because there are specific kind of changes they want to see, because they care about policy, but that's not what they can focus on. So actually it's really, really important to have these other players, think tanks and others, who will come up with proposals for you. And it's particularly important for parties in opposition, because this is where it's their kind of lab in a way, isn't it? This is where that they can take kind of preformed policy ideas, they can discuss, they can debate, they can test stuff, and if they've done their job right, they can then come into an election and perhaps into government with a whole kind of stack of worked out policy proposals. It's interesting because I'd always seen Labour as its kind of core sort of supporter demographic tend to be kind of earnest types who really care about policy. I'd had this view that in the 24 election they were going to come in very, very prepared, because absolutely stuffed with policy nerds. Not the case at all. It's been a real shock to many, actually, just how unprepared they were and how much time they lost actually having to work up policy ideas and kind of go through it, because it takes a long time to develop policy. It's anybody can come up with great ideas, but are they going to work? Are they feasible? Are they going to have the impact desired? You only know that when you put some serious research into it. You look at what's been done internationally. And so it does take a long time. And then, of course, you have to consult and you see how people feel about it. So developing good policy takes a long time. But yeah, that's what the think tanks are for. And I mean, tax is a great example, as David has said. It is a big issue in British policy and politics right now. And actually, there has been really, really great policy work done in a number of think tanks actually around tax and just how dysfunctional British taxation has become. It really needs a total reset. And actually, there's a big headline in the FT today suggesting that Andy Burnham is being advised by ex Bank of England person who's been very big on tax reform actually. So who knows?
That's interesting what you were saying about not coming in unprepared. That sort of sounds to me very unforgivable. Like when you look at Trump, they had 4 years of working out all of their policies before they came into power, right? But Brexit. Now, the last time I was in the UK spending time with family, no one wanted to talk about it. Everyone basically just said, we can't talk about it. We just have to accept it. We're moving on. And as a parent of 2 boys with British passports, it really still pisses me off because it's taken so many of their choices away, but it's taking so many young people's choices away. But I can't remember what the percentage was, but an incredibly high percentage of young people want back in. What do you think? What's going on? Will it go back in? Is it what? It's obvious. The data's sort of saying, yep. What do you think?
Yeah, you're right. There has been such a sustained move towards a pro EU and a pro rejoin sort of trend, and yeah, with the age profile of the vote, it was kind of inevitable. So there is a sense that. There is a big sense that it's inevitable at some point that Britain will join the EU, but I think it's also accepted that right now, politically, it's just a no-go. And a big reason for that is because we still have, 2 parties, Reform and the Conservatives, who are committed to, undoing, if they got into power, undoing any kind of further move towards the EU. And where you have that level of polarization in party politics, the EU is not going to allow a country in where they don't know who they're going to be negotiating with. So the EU is going to be looking for not just opinion polls, but they're going to be looking for political consensus across all of the main political contenders. And only once that is settled, that would be the time to start thinking about it.
Yeah. All right. And the final political question before we go into the cybersecurity. One of the people responsible for Brexit is Nigel Farage, and now he's looking like potentially could be the next Prime Minister. I mean, it just boggles my mind that is even a possibility. He's such a snake. Please tell me it's not going to happen. Please. I don't know if I could cope.
I'm going to get my crystal ball out. I tentatively would predict that he will not become Prime Minister. Because he is so polarizing. What we've seen in the last few by-elections in the UK is that Reform has underperformed, and that was particularly so in Makerfield, where Andy Burnham just won. And the reason for that is because he is so polarizing, so divisive. It creates a very, very motivated opposition who are happy to put aside their political differences to vote in whichever way will keep them out. And this has become a bigger and bigger feature of British political life, tactical voting. So I think that there are more and more kind of tools available to help voters understand if they have to vote tactically, which way they should go. I think we will see that. I guess what we may see in the next election, it's quite possible that we will see a very, very messy multi-party coalition, the kind of thing which is common in Europe, but not so in British life. If that happened, I would wonder if we might see for the first time voting reform. We might well get a push towards a more proportionate system. But yeah, right. I would. Yeah.
That
Well,
gives
that's
me hope.
sort of back
I
to
was just okay. Was that you, David? I'm just going to say Joe
yeah.
hasn't said anything yet, but David, do you want just a couple of minutes, and we're going to ask you a final question.
I was going to say that's sort of back to the time when Liberal Democrats was hoping that would happen when they joined House with Conservatives and got completely pissed off the bloc. And but the other part of it, and although I do think it would not be a bad thing, the other thing I'd like to say is that actually, with regards to the policy, is the problem with the Labour and the Conservative and Reform and everyone else is they have no economic policy. They have economic ideas that they think somehow is going to fix it, but there's no coherent policy towards any of their economic ideas. They don't connect up between the people at the different levels of where they are within the society, within the wealth, within taxation brackets, within how the global economy actually has a place for the UK or not. There is no coherent sense of what that economic policy is. And joining the EU without one is a disaster. But then doing anything else without one is a disaster.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, One Nation in Australia don't have an economic policy either. All right, Joe, have you got any thoughts? Jess, so I just noticed Jess can stay on for a little bit longer, so we're not in a rush. But yeah, what jumped out at you?
I'm afraid I'm not really familiar with the soap opera known as the UK politics. No, I've been talking about how finding leaders that are charismatic. That's always been a big thing for me. I think you've got to, especially when there are difficult things to do or difficult challenges ahead. That sense that I can believe in somebody, that's going to be very, very important. And I think this whole thing about the where the young want to go. I'm not sure if there's enough knowledge about how government works and what's at stake in terms of negotiating and stuff like that to sometimes meet those demands. I mean, I think the aspirations don't match up sometimes to the ability or the desire to meet those expectations come along with that. Like, to rejoin the EU is, as I hear it, going to be very expensive, disadvantages. They're going to lose a lot on the way in. The deal's not going to be that good. And whether or not, it's one of those things where it feels like the thing you need to do, because everything doesn't seem to be working all that well. I'm not sure if it. I mean, look, I don't want to be the one to say that maybe Brexit's a good idea because I never thought it was. But is there another way to skin this, right? I mean, is there another way to look at it and go like, okay, if we can't get all the good deals, if we can't get everything in, if you're going to go back to the end of the queue again, is that something that's really a good thing for them?
Yeah, there's the sentiment that's coming through is very much that the Europeans are going to be a lot more kind in rather than punishing them as they come back in. It's going to be a lot more respectful. And I think what Starmer's done in his foreign approach, I think, has sort of paved the way for that. The coalition of the willing and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know, the message is coming out from Europe that they would very much welcome them back rather than make them suffer to come back. But
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah,
I think there is a very firm European belief that it's just not worth the hassle. The UK economy is very small; it doesn't contribute a lot, and all you get is political mayhem. It's like 13% of European GDP. It's not a massive shift in economic enlargement. And the hassle it would take to do that would be phenomenal. I can see it happening a generation from now when all of us are, well walking away with, sticks and wheelchairs or whatever, because you would need enough time to effectively get to the point that Jess was describing. You have a new approach, a new clear deck of politicians that are in no way tainted by the past, with a complete reset. And then I actually think it will happen. But for me, it would be 20 to 30 years from now. And by then, it's probably going to look very, very different on a global map as well. We don't even know if EU will look anywhere near the same as it would do today. I think there is, at the moment, absolutely zero appetite for Europe to engage with UK coming back within the next 5 years. It's just political mayhem. And the energy is not just there. You have much bigger issues on your doorstep than UK coming back or not. So I think it will happen, but it's 20, 30 years from now.
Sorry, David?
I was going to say every personal experience of Europe at the moment, and I go to Europe, I like Europe, my friends are in Europe, my goddaughter is in France, my wife's from Germany, and I love it in that way, is that it is a real pain in the ass now. But basically, you everything you do, you send a package, you send a present to someone, it doesn't get there. Someone sends it from Australia, it goes there. But you send it from the UK, it doesn't get there. Every attempt to do anything with on just a basis that you do with Thailand or anything else, it's just not possible. There's just every level of it is like, fine, whatever, but actually this is where it stays. And so I don't think there is any, on that evidence, I don't think there's any real interest to say, actually, it'll be nice to kind of rejoin in that way. I also don't see, we talk about 30 years, right? Richard talked about, maybe in 30 years. My laptop couldn't work this morning and now suspended it on all sorts of things. I was short of pouring ice over it. Okay, I've got a fan underneath and everything else. And that's from, today being a bit hotter than what it normally is. Okay. So the productivity impact of climate is completely being ignored by the Labour Party, by its economic policy, by everyone else, and is trying to tax in that way along with it. And we're going to find that the whole political profile is going to collapse because our politics requires a system by which somehow it gets financed in some way. The expectations of demands are increasing, but what's going on is that the ability to finance it, to support it, is really being reduced. My wife works in the NHS. She's a midwife. Her stories of what she faces in terms of what she's being asked to do versus what physically they're capable of doing is just diverging. At the same time, the reports that come out is demanding more to be done in that way. That goes across at every areas that we want to think about in terms of social services, in terms of our safety industries, in terms of our housing that people are demanding, and all of those things. And it's just going to collapse. I just do not see how politics in any country is going to be able to continue because it totally ignores the fact that every year from now on, our productivity is going to be a little bit lower because on the day like we've been having in the past few days, you just don't work, despite the best will in the world. And our expectation is next year, somehow we're going to make it back up. So we're using our savings in the expectation that we can keep up our lifestyle the way we are, because next year we're going to get this bumper year. It's going to be okay. We vote for the next guy, kick this one out, it's going to turn. So you talk about 30 years' time, you're just talking cloud cuckoo land. Who the hell knows what happens in 30 years' time? You've got to get across the next 5 years, the next 10 years.
Yeah, Richard.
There's going to be no closer alignment over the next 5, 10, other than that they will negotiate probably better trade deals. But the political integration is absolutely not in the cards. Europe doesn't think it's worth the hassle. You
look at the latest, the French Global Injustice Lab, Inequality Lab, or whatever, the Piketty report that came out, and the UN policy report supported by the UN on ending global poverty and having this sort of universal tax across all countries in those ways. You can't harmonize. You still can't harmonize their own taxation between them to support their free policy, and yet the policy think tanks have this idea that somehow we're going to be able to tax the rich in that way. But the rich on a global level is the middle class in the UK. And you're going to say you're going to tax them to take the money out of what they want for their own services and objecting to being taxed to go somewhere else across the world because we face this climate crisis and this inequality that increases and all the rest of it. That's the situation. We've got a political mindset based upon how state can help, should be there to serve people and help them in that way, as opposed to a more realistic mindset, which state can't do that. What they can do is to help people to help themselves in a good way. But that's not UK politics.
No, I actually think we're out for a revolution in democratic politics, full stop. Like, we need a really different approach. The elders, I don't know if you've come across the elders, it's Mary Robinson, what's his name? South Africa. Nelson Mandela was one of the guys that set it up with a group of other people.
They kicked Blair out of it.
He better not be in it, that man.
No, they kicked him out.
But I wanted to move to another topic, and I'm sure we'll come back to politics. But there was a Five Eyes statement this week, and because of Jess's expertise, I wanted you to sort of communicate what it was about, but also maybe explain what the Five Eyes is for people who don't know. I'm just going to let my cat out before she starts moaning. Just a sec.
Yeah. Okay. So the Five Eyes is the security partnership between the five kind of Anglophone countries, so UK, Australia, Canada, the US, and New Zealand. So there's been a sort of intelligence sharing partnership there for quite some time. And I mean, cybersecurity has become a really, I mean, it's been a core component now of security intelligence for obvious reasons. And so there's a lot of kind of shared intelligence, which is really helpful, because actually a big aspect of keeping ourselves safe as individuals, as individual organizations as well, is being able to tap into, you know, what other people are seeing, because that's exactly what the bad guys are doing, right? Bad guys are constantly kind of sharing, pooling resources, coming together, you know, swapping stuff. They've got absolutely no legal constraints, you know, they can share data like anything, right? They've got no GDPR, you know. So it's really important that defenders are able to share intelligence as well. So yeah, they've just released a statement, and so I guess if you kind of look at the headlines, the statement would sort of say something like, you know, God, like AI is supercharging, you know, cyber attacks. It's the bad guys have got the power of this new technology now, and we all have to use it as well. So that's kind of the headline. If you actually dig into the text, it's much more moderate. The big message is things are speeding up, and we are still not over the basics. This is the big problem with cybersecurity. 99% of attacks are not particularly sophisticated. They're using the fact that, you know, your average organization has just got loads and loads of unpatched software that's been sitting around for years. You know, it's got just really everyday insecurities. They are not kind of doing sort of sophisticated heists. They're kind of walking in through the front door half the time, you know. So this is the big message of the Five Eyes statement, is you have to get over the basics. And so they've reiterated, you know, for the 1000th time what the basics are. Patch your stuff, plan, you know, do incident planning, plan actively to be attacked, make sure you know what you would do. It's keep on top of identity, so you don't have, you know, like loads of open accounts everywhere. Reduce the number of internets you've got, of systems you've got exposed to the internet. So it's kind of tried and tested. This is the stuff we know we need to do. It's not exotic, you know, it's not new. And all that's happened is that I will say I won't say AI, I will say automation. Okay, so automation across a whole range of different technologies and different types. It's speeding things up. That's what's happening, and so that's when we need to think about it. I think if we fixate on Gen AI, it's kind of unhelpful. It feeds this perception that cybersecurity is just this impossibly sophisticated topic that, you know, you have to have huge amounts of specialist knowledge and only a few people understand it. It feeds that perception. That's not helpful, because it's, you know, it's a bit like climate, right? People start to feel like there's literally nothing they can do, and this thing is just an unstoppable force of nature. That's not the case. We have to fix the basics. We know how to do this. We just got to get on and do it.
Yeah. I've got a whole bunch of people in my life that are in the cyberspace, so it's really interesting. Did you have a chance to read the Wired article that I sent? It said, I met with China's top AI experts, and they're freaking out too. And basically what they're saying is that both sides are worried about a Chernobyl-like moment. Did you have a chance to have a look at that one, Jess? Because I think one of the things that people don't really get is like, oh, it's going to end civilization, it's going to kill us all, you know, those sort of terms regularly in the media. And I think a lot of people sit there and go, how? What do you think about that sort of stuff, that sort of framing? And what are the true risks?
Yeah, look, the true risks are that we lose control, and that we allow these technologies to do really, really stupid things. I think what's unhelpful is when we kind of project a Terminator kind of situation, where this stuff, where this technology kind of gains independent agency and autonomy. What we're starting to see now is the deployment of AI agents, which can do a lot more. Well, if we want to let that stuff run riot in our enterprises, yeah, we can go ahead and knock ourselves out. What is going to follow is just completely and utterly predictable. It's just going to be chaos. And, you know, you're already seeing, I mean, you talk to cybersecurity professionals, cyber leaders, they already have huge problems with what's just become a massive form of shadow IT. And, you know, hundreds of abandoned agents and stuff that people have got halfway through installing, have lost interest in, and just doing all sorts of crazy things. So it's just going to be the inevitable consequence, and stuff is just going to break. Is it going to be like Chernobyl? I can't see it. I mean, yeah, sure. If you decided that you were going to run your nuclear power station on a bunch of AI agents, I just can't see that happening. You know, I think enterprises are already running into problems. Vibe coding, for example, is just producing huge amounts of very, very poor code with like loads of problems and, you know, bugs and stuff that falls over. We have to look at this in terms of, you know, it's just things going wrong, not necessarily this malicious. There's no malicious intent. It's just stuff that doesn't work, you know. So I think that's a better way to look at it.
All right. So in this article, I'll just give you a quick summary of some of the things from the the Chernobyl equivalent framing. So autonomous cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. Obviously, you mentioned nuclear power plants, grid failure, reactor shutdown, misoperation. Rapidly proliferated open models uses cyber weapons, which, you know, we're kind of seeing that. AI designed biological agent or lab protocol errors, self-modifying agentic model escapes, containment, software supply chain compromise at scale, and then there's social system collapse via AI scale misinformation, automated trading. So yeah, I mean, I think the misinformation side of things is another huge part of that story. So I don't know, just thoughts on any of those?
Honestly, I find it hard to comment. I mean, it paints a very emotive picture, doesn't it? I don't think it's helpful. I think we have to look at what we can do today to keep things functioning. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to individual decisions about the technology in our organizations, right? I assume that people running organisations don't want things generally to fall over and to descend into a morass of stuff that just does not work. And in order to keep their organisations running, they are going to have to keep on top of AI in their organisations. That's just the bottom line. We're already starting to see people waking up. AI governance is now a thing. But then you look at the other side of this, which is not the, what we do to ourselves, but it's what the bad guys do to us. And again, you're back in the realm of cybersecurity now. No question about it. Everything is going to be weaponized by bad actors for bad purposes. We just have to keep on top of it. But like I say, things will get more sophisticated. Defenders will get more sophisticated as well. We just have to keep monitoring what's going on. We have to keep sharing intelligence, and we have to do the basics. Because right now we are just, we're not in the realm of robot wars right now. We don't need to be, unless you're at the front line in Ukraine, which most of us are not yet, thank God.
Yeah. Oh, that's reassuring. All right, Joe, I'm going to spotlight you because you're our tech guy. Any thoughts on what Jess is sharing? Oh, wait a minute, you're muted. I'll unmute you. No, I can't. You got to unmute yourself.
Yeah. No, I think the article is actually talking much more about the kind of disaster that can come out of it. Not so much in terms of systems and stuff like that, but it's just like it unto itself, the way it's developing, the way they're pushing to it. They're talking about how on all sides of the race, everyone's concerned about the untold or the unexpected consequences that may come out of AI, where you could have some kind of apocalypse, but they're stuck in it because it's they're stuck in that race. They're stuck in this prisoner's dilemma. They're damned if they don't, basically, right? So that's I think that's what they were talking much more about, and I think everyone involved to varying degrees has got the concerns about what's going on, but they're also at the same time just strapping on their workloads and saying, we got to keep going with the work. So it's a very risky kind of situation, in the sense it's very much like what the markets are doing right now, where I think everyone who has seen the markets from before, the more professional investors are going like, it's not a really good time to stay in the market. Everything doesn't look right, but we're going to stay in the market. So I think that's what's going on in AI as well.
All right, so we've got about 15 more minutes of Jess. So there's three quick stories. So first of all, I don't know if it was David or Joe who mentioned last week that the pink boots at the World Cup on every team. And I saw some coverage. Was it you, David? And I saw some coverage afterwards, and none of them mentioned that it was an AI design of those pink boots, and basically the AI gave every team the suggestion that they should design pink boots because it's better for TV coverage. Alan Greenspan died this week, and I just wanted to ask either Richard or David, based on your careers, any thoughts on his legacy? Anyone want to quickly jump in?
Go on, Richard.
It could be a long one. I think for almost a quarter of a century was the world's most powerful man, and he I think it's also the question of someone who actually means very well, fundamentally, but overdid it because you get so caught up in this whole belief system that you take on godlike properties and you can fix it, that eventually it backfires on you. I think there is no doubt that he kept monetary policy too loose for too long, and a lot of the bubbles we've seen over the last 20 years has firmly his signature on.
How long was
that's a tough legacy.
How long was he Fed chair?
He
long?
single-handedly
20 years.
created asset inflation.
Yes.
He single-handedly created homes you cannot afford. Places that assets are too expensive. He created the wealth inequality. That was all down to him.
Yes.
And
Yes,
he did that because he was a fervent supporter of the I brand idiocy, that somehow people left to pursue their own personal interest is the best thing in a framework where somehow someone is looking after everyone else. And he turned policy into an instrument of making that happen.
All right, I'm going to. Ollie's saying neo-lib dino. I'm going to move on to another story because I want to get onto the heat before Jess goes, because you guys are experiencing it. So there was a really interesting story this week about a downed US pilot who reported seeing Iranian drones swarm in a jellyfish formation. And what's been really interesting about this story is it's being negated, because it's basically an ability or a skill with drones that's never been seen in warfare anywhere in the world. And the reason they're saying disputing it is because they basically said he wasn't capable of understanding what was going on. I think he had concussion or something. But it's a really interesting story nonetheless. But anyway, I want to move on to extreme heat. So the world is awash with extreme heat news out of Europe and the UK, and I totally get it. But just to remind everyone, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh are still going through extreme heat with 53 degrees deaths off the scale, but we don't know what those numbers are because they don't record them properly. But there's no way they can't. Their animals are dying, their farm animals are dying. And then Bangkok this week, its heat index reached 51.9 degrees Celsius. And this is not the heat season. So the heat season in Thailand is basically from February to sort of early May. So for it to be sitting up at that high. So it's not just Europe, but Europe is obviously suffering, and basically your cities, towns, regions are just not set up for it. Big piece today about the amount of animals, cows, chickens that are dying or have died, as well as not producing milk or not able to produce young. So it's pretty big. But I just wanted to say maybe we'll start with Jess, because you've got to go in 8 minutes. How are you dealing with the heat over there, and what's the conversation that's happening around heat that you're hearing? What are people talking about?
I think this is one of those areas where that kind of polarized nature of political discourse in recent years is just so incredibly unhelpful. So as far as I can see, everyone is arguing about air conditioning. Like it's a political thing. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm sorry, it makes me furious. This is like the existential issue of our time, and we've got this pathetic debate about how aircon is somehow right wing, and left wingers are obviously against it, and it's infantile. It's ridiculous. We need to be in the realm of and it's the same.
Is that happening? Is that happening in the UK as well? That argument about aircon?
It is. And it's in France as well, apparently. You're
right there, Richard.
Yeah, something just fell, but I managed to parry it.
But how does it feel where you are, Jess? Are you suffering?
It's really unpleasant. I mean, like you say, British houses are just not designed for it, right? I mean, British houses are pretty badly built anyway by anyone's standards. They're very poorly insulated, so not great in winter, and also it turns out not great in extreme heat. So the kind of adaptations we're going to need. I mean, it's particularly urban areas are really, really unpleasant. You get this kind of heat dome effect, don't you? It's all this dark tarmac, just makes it much worse. So look, I mean, this is an area, I think, where you talked earlier, Andrea, about how hard it is for any politician to kind of be positive, with a message like this to deliver, we've just got to be focusing relentlessly on solutions. To me, this is it. I'm just sick of all the political nonsense. We've just got to focus on doing what we've got to do to adapt. I think that there's a political opportunity there for anybody that wants to talk in a like Mamdani. You know, Zohran Mamdani is really, really good at this stuff. You know, he's always talking about the realm of the possible. He's making it a kind of shared mission. You know, this is absolutely what we should be doing around climate adaptation as well. It should be a national mission. This is something we can all come together to do. You know, to paint all our roofs white and you know replace dark tarmac with reflecting surfaces. You know, I think it was David that talked about how politics at the moment is just not up to the job, right? Because it's right, there are so many aspects of modern British life which just seem completely normal to people, which we now have to like the way that everybody complains about when anybody wants to kind of make major changes to the to cities. Anyone wants to kind of build anything big, that's a real problem. Everybody complains about it. They just don't like change, do they? We're going to have to change. We're going to have to rip up the laws which say that we can't paint our houses because of conservation regulations. It's ridiculous, you know. So people are going to get with the program. Well, you know, we're sitting here in Singapore, and I'm pretty sure that Joe's got his aircon running too. Yes, Joe. You can't survive without it when you get into this heat. And in the UK, you guys have got humidity as well. It's just it gets to a temperature. And just before we came on, there was another article about UK hospitals that are breaking down. They're overwhelmed with patients. The MRIs and X-ray systems aren't working. Their technology is failing. Their IT systems are failing. There's elderly people in these rooms. They're building these hospitals where like 30% of the hospitals got AC, but the rest of it hasn't. And there's all these elderly people sitting there, and the room is 35 degrees Celsius, which is deadly, you know, for someone in that age group. It's just like, come on, guys, like this is adaptation. And it's not like you guys are going to be using AC 365 days a year like we have to do out in this part of the world. Although I have to say, Joe, I don't know if you've enjoyed it. We've had a couple of nice cool days this week, and there hasn't been a cool day for 6 months in this part of the world. So that's been kind of nice. But yeah, the politicization of air conditioning is just, for me, it's just like. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I think I think, you know, what Jess saying, sort of bringing together is really quite important. I think that, and the ability independently to think of doing that. I think the part of just jumping to the idea of an aircon as the quick first immediate answer is one of these things where individually works well, but if you live in the city, it's going to make the city impossible because it just chucks all the heat outside.
Absolutely.
And that makes it absolutely impossible. So a few things I think is worth mentioning. So we had hot day on Tuesday night, had an incredible storm in London. I was listening to continuous rolling thunder, which I never heard before. I was with my mum afterwards, read her in the mornings, driving at Nature's Place, playlist on my YouTube thing, go listen to that fantastic thing, and just quick plug there. But she hadn't heard it either, and it went on for like 10 minutes. This sort of continuous thunder that went along there. Really heavy rain, monsoon type kind of intensity of rain, which again the UK is not used to. Next day, my wife got a picture from her office, and it's the rain that made it unusable. It collapsed the ceilings. It found a way in, completely damaged everything along in there, and so they ended up having to shift. So we talk of the heat, but the heat has other consequences. The whole thing is not one aspect of it, and people tend to fixate on one aspect of it, and as a result, what they end up doing is they end up spending the resources that they really can't afford to waste in that way, without taking a moment and getting a way of actually bringing a whole better, fuller picture together to think about how you go about it and what you might do. And if you do that, you can really bring it all together. You can bring different people together and different parts together, and you change the way in which your, in my mind, politics works in that sense. Whereas we tend to think of it as national politics, national policy. What is policy on air conditioning? That's kind of just pointed to, and that's the point about this Telegraph article lambasting Camden Council for its air conditioning policy, because it was abiding by some national policy in that way. It's a bit like the bent banana, whether it actually exists or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is that and that's what creates it. And so we need a very different kind of ability to enter into the discomfort zone. Outside of our comfort zone is the discomfort zone. That's the zone by which where we start learning. Beyond that is the threatening, kind of the threat zone, the alarm zone. That's where we recoil.
Yeah. Sorry, David. David, just before you continue, I know Jess has to jump off now, right? Yeah.
I don't actually, but
okay.
but I can go.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. No, you're welcome to stay. I'm keeping an eye on the time for you. All right, sorry, David.
We keep showing you the door.
No, happy to have
you. So what we need to recognize individually is that we are in the discomfort zone whether we like it or not. You know, the whole nature of change is you're placed into that, and the change is external. Is coming in. That it's no longer the case. I choose when I want to go for a different job in a different country, and I face the discomfort of moving there. It's the fact that the fact of living in a different country is actually landing on you here, because when you go out of the street, as I will do later on, it's not going to feel like walking out in London. It's going to feel like me walking out in some Mediterranean country or somewhere else. That's what it is. So embracing that sort of discomfort as the process by which you can learn along and actually find out where your place is what we need to talk a lot more about, rather than thinking of it as saying there's this war, we can't face a change, we need national policies over this before anything can be done. By the time those national policies can come, you're going to find that there is no financing for it. That's the reality. Most of the things, you talk of the NHS hospitals, they're not in that state because people want to choose to have them in that state. They are in that state because somehow the financing is not working along. And the struggle of getting the financing to somehow miraculously fix it all is why Keir Starmer no longer has a job as the Prime Minister. And that's going to face the next guy. So figuring out how we make the changes without thinking there is that finance. Stop wasting your money in trying to think, how do you keep your comfort zone intact? Think about how you use it to engage with the discomfort zone.
All right. Okay. I think I'm with you, but I want to move on to nuclear energy. So France has had to shut down a couple of its nuclear reactors. So we're in this really interesting time at the moment, right? So if you've been paying attention to the climate emergency for a long time, your life is full of deniers, and or people who say, oh, it's not going to happen until this time, and it's going to be all a lot faster, and here we are. So in France, which I think something like 60% of its energy comes from nuclear energy, does that sound about right?
Sounds about right. 2/3, I think.
Yeah, so
2/3 of the electricity comes from nukes, not overall energy. Yeah.
Okay. So they've had to shut down a couple. So basically, they take the water from their rivers, they put them into the plants to cool them down, and then they release the water back into the rivers. But the water is hotter, and if they release it into the rivers during a extreme heat event, it's going to destroy the ecosystem of the river. So that's basically what's happened. But nuclear energy always comes up as a sustainable energy solution. In China, they have invented nuclear reactors which are cooled with sand. But it's always one of these conversations, and there's a massive push for nuclear energy. I know Singapore's on a massive push for nuclear energy as well. I mean, we've got a physicist here, we've got all sorts of, but like the old nuclear systems that we have already in place, the energy ones, they're very vulnerable to sea level rise, but they're also vulnerable to extreme heat. Anyone want to sort of jump in?
I think the physicist should go first, and then I'll crush it with the political reality.
Yeah, exactly. I think the really interesting thing is 2025 BP's Energy Outlook report. It publishes this every year, and it was looking at the total energy demand necessary in order to stay below the 2% limit by 2050. And what it says is that every region in the world, including the developing countries, have to reduce their energy use. And this is separating out China. In total, has to be less than what it is now. When we talk about nuclear energy and doing those things, we're talking about how we can increase our energy use. It doesn't matter how you want to generate that increase in energy use, you're going to have to use some form of energy to generate it. And that's why we all end up having to reduce it. And at the moment, you know, the interesting thing that nobody talks about is the fact that we've come from like 86% of fossil fuels driving our primary energy, which means energy including the energy to create energy, back in the time of, I think, Paris Agreement, to about 80%, over 80%. Or actually 86% might have been even before that. I don't think we dropped that far over this time. It might be possible. But our total fossil fuel use has increased over this period. It hasn't come down. We keep fixating on the percentage, thinking it has made a difference, but it's the total amount we actually use, the barrels of it, that matters. And that has been increasing. And we're moving more to gas, to natural gas. Natural gas, the way it is that the sky has different windows. So basically, there are kind of small windows that are kind of shaped one way and windows shaped another way and so on. And carbon dioxide is one shaped window. Methane is another shaped window. Methane is natural gas. So carbon dioxide windows are sort of closing along. Once you've closed them all, they're all closed, adding more, there are no more to close. But sticking more methane around, natural gas, and every time you imagine plugging it or whatever, and it leaks, means you're closing the other ones as well. And that's the part of it. They have a much greater impact, partly because a lot of them are open. So you're beginning to close it and it's having that impact along. So we're actually on a path of accelerating what really will happen in our climate change. The climate modeling doesn't presume we are going to do this sort of thing. It thinks it's a path that somehow is all going to come on down in that way. It doesn't take into account that we are actually going to face more desire for energy. Our politics is going to be talking about how, if you vote for me, I will allow more nuclear power plants to go through, or allow more of that, and they will be green by the time that they finish and everything. The path towards it is the problem. It's not how beautiful our vision of our future is, it's whether we can actually survive getting there.
Yeah.
So, Richard, I'm with the politics.
Well, you're describing it perfectly, right? As long as we keep on increasing our energy demand, this is all for naught. At some point, you need to use less. Because if that doesn't happen, we know what the end game looks like. Now, within the parts that we can keep on using, I'm very pro-nuclear. I think it's a great energy source, but with a few caveats. It made absolutely no sense for Germany to decommission its nuclear power plants, which were working absolutely fine, and replace it with Russian gas. I mean, that is a hole in the head. That, I'm sure Putin's money drove the green movement that encouraged that in Germany. Because you have such lag times building nuclears, I don't think it makes a phenomenal amount of sense to start now. The lead times are just incredible. We need 10, 15 years to do it in the West. The Chinese can probably do it in 5 or 7, but it's still a significant lead time. So you're better off using solar and wind power, which is much shorter in that space, to keep on building out our renewables at the moderate pace that allows for. But the key will always be to reduce our energy use, nothing else. Find ways of using less. That's the only way we can achieve this.
Yeah. We can start by getting rid of all the bullshit industries that do not serve society and humanity, right? It's a good place. But the idea that we reduce, all of us.
But it's a really tough way to describe it to people. Imagine being the politician and telling it's populace, we need to do less. Politicians get elected by promising to do more, not doing less. But that is the fundamental key.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, take the UK as an example. So the UK has done incredibly well in decarbonising its energy systems, really, really well. The UK, I think, has actually certainly not increased its energy use. So gains in energy efficiency tend to happen just with technological progress, right? So no politician has to stand up and lecture. No sensible politician has to stand up and lecture the population about how they should reduce their energy use. It just doesn't need to happen. We can do it by driving by product standards. That's the biggest thing, right?
But the UK doesn't.
To some extent, the average UK household uses more energy now than they did 5 years ago, and more 5 years ago than they did 10 years ago.
And the energy efficiency has improved. And the point is that if you more energy efficiency, you buy two.
Because we love to use energy. It's fun to use energy. We can do so much more stuff at home by using energy.
Improving energy intensity per product does not lead to global energy reduction in terms of what it consumes.
The UK outsources a lot of its energy, so a lot of what people in the UK consume, what they wear, what they buy, is made somewhere else. So the energy reduction apparent in the UK is actually because they outsource it. Most Western countries outsource the majority of the energy in the creation of the stuff that they use, and I think that's the bit people miss, right? So in a country like Australia, which is like the second biggest fossil fuel exporter in the world, it doesn't where those fossil fuels are used is not attributed to Australia. It's attributed to the countries where it's used. But if Australia was actually made responsible for everything that all of the energy that was created out of the fossil fuels that we dig out of the ground, that Australia would be by far the biggest polluter in the world, right? So it's the way we measure energy usage, which I think is the problem, because we're never being honest with ourselves about our own country's energy usage. That's kind of the way.
The way that carbon emissions are measured, that does take into account imports. That is definitely the case. Look, I think going back to the sort of political aspects here, I do maintain that no politician has to stand up and lecture their population about this. What we need are mechanisms which function outside of politics, and the most important one is the price mechanism. So expensive energy drives people to reduce, right?
You'll lose your vote. That's the problem. You'll lose your vote. I mean, the level at which we need energy to be expensive is not things that people will accept. Genuinely, you need £4 of petrol for your petrol. You need your electricity in that sort of way. Whether it's produced renewably or not. People have this idea that somehow food needs to be affordable. If you actually price the energy cost of food into that thing properly, you can't afford it. You shouldn't be able to afford it. You need to go and grow your own. And in today's kind of urban cities and stuff, people don't feel they have the ability to do so, or the green fingers to do so. And pricing is not a mechanism that you can actually use in the way you think, because every year from now on, our earnings are being reduced compared to what we expect it to be. And our costs are rising up. You take a look at what Super El Nino is going to do. It's going to devastate the hydroelectricity that's drives a lot of South America. They're going to have a real energy crisis as a result of that. Hydroelectricity provides sufficient amount. The whole push, 2022, what happened along there, it got triggered by drought in China that moved it along. That caused the drop in hydroelectricity into their industrial areas, pushed up the prices all the way along. We're going to find, if we really want to think of a pricing mechanism, that you can only do that in a world where you are in some ways a steady state, and you can transfer what you can do from one into another. In a world where everything is getting worse every year, where your productivity is forced to be lower every year, although you keep thinking somehow you're going to improve it, but when you try and improve it, you're going to use more energy instead. You're going to find politically you're not going to survive, which goes back to our thing. I mean, Andrea's comment, we're losing that ability for our democracy to work, because our economy, our economic basis, all of our economic theories, all of our policy economic think tanks work on the basis that the environmental economics is unchanged over the lifetime of their political economic policies. But the environmental economics is fundamentally changing.
Yeah, and I think that's the education level that we need in society, right? So you're not going to vote in the Nigel Farage who's promising to fix complex problems and can't, because nobody can, so it's a problem. But I want to move on to the economy, because I think it's really important. And I was relieved to see, and you guys know I talk about this all the time, the polycrisis is lots of different things happening all at the same time, and they all come together and compound each other, right? And what we keep seeing the media do is they talk about one, or they'll talk about the other. So in The Guardian this week, compound shock effect, why the Middle East crisis and El Nino could spell disaster in Southeast Asia, right? So they're bringing two things together. So what's it going to obviously have an impact? Trade, energy exposure, the economy, it's already happening. Fertilizer, crop risk. So you've got this extreme heat. Once it gets above 40 degrees, rice basically can't grow, can't flower. This is going to be a global disaster, not just impacting in the region, but food's going to cost more. The poorest are going to suffer. Higher food bills or famine, which of course leads to violence. We know the El Nino's going to be a big part of it. Shipping, insurance costs, and then obviously geopolitics. We're going to see more disruption, probably more people voting in extremist politicians. So, so this is the next 12 months it's going to be a really, really bumpy ride, and I want people to be educated in this stuff so that they don't make stupid decisions from a place of fear, but elect the adults who can lead us through this time. But from a global economic perspective, I'm not hearing good news from the economists in any way, shape, or form, even if they're only talking about the Straits of Hormuz or El Nino. I'm not hearing any good news. But David, Richard, what are you hearing? What are you saying? Richard, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't think there's any good news anywhere, really. It's pretty clear that if your starting point is with very low food stocks in a historical context, you have unprecedented weather events taking place, and you have rapidly deteriorating geopolitics where each country is starting to look after their own. And then you have sort of specific impacts, particularly with regard to fertilizers, etc. You are going to put global food stocks under unprecedented strain, because effectively there are two crops that feed the world. It's rice and wheat. And those stocks are running very low. And that's a bad starting point for what we're heading into. I would put the risk probably at 50% for food rationing in the UK in Q3, Q4.
We had, just to put that in context, the world has 3 months stock to its use in grains.
And there are frictions in that, right? There are huge
one
frictions.
harvest cycle.
So
China actually owns most of that stock.
Yeah, I
just,
think
just to put it in context, China actually owns most of that stock.
Is it in China?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's in warehouses there, right? So, but paradoxically, if you're an optimist, and I'm always an optimist, it might actually be the event that forces real great wake-up calls. It's pretty clear you're not going to get a ration book sent at home in the UK, but you will go to the supermarket and the politicians will have been leaning in and restricting food sales per customer, because that's how you're going to effectively ration the stock that exists. And when people are faced with that reality, I think it might be a massive wake-up call, because all this ties back to people should have the right to have food as cheap as possible. But when things are cheap, it breeds effectively some form of complacency and disregard for the true cost. And we have raped the earth to provide food at ever cheaper levels. And now we're going to start harvesting that, literally speaking. And it will be a wake-up call. When my parents were born, food basket was 80% of household expenditure. Now it's like 10%. It puts things into perspective.
Yeah, that's interesting. Joe, do you want to say anything?
It's a good time for Starmer to go, I guess. Sounds like he's dodging a bullet here.
Yeah, well, yeah. Why would anyone want to be in politics right now? It's like,
because they all think they can fix it.
Yeah, well,
that's the
no. I don't think that's necessarily true. I mean, there was I sent this post along. Okay, this is my own personal view. Johannes Rockström, kind of Greta's kind of favorite climate scientist, and all about AMOC and planetary boundaries and all the rest. So they gave this talk a couple of weeks ago, and I was watching this, and it was very good. Explained kind of like the boundaries and all of those things and what needs to be done and all the rest of it. And he made this point about, the best ideas are there, or we have the best ideas, we can use the best ideas, and that's what we need to bring together. And what really irked me about that is it's never the best ideas. It's the ideas that allow the nasty person to take power, stay in power for as long as possible and control you. Those are the ideas that gets picked up. And to try and present it as thinking actually it's the best ideas that's going to save us in this way, it's not. It's about recognizing that it's always some nasty guy who's going to pick up some idea that's going to use it to take control of the power and keep it for as long as possible. And if you really want to think about politics, you have to think about it in those ways in this world, because the way in which it has worked, the reason for why the UN's kind of poverty, the recent report by the UK UN Special Rapporteur on the, kind of inequalities and poverty and whatever it is, that has come out, is it's framed into a world, into a context of an environmental economics that continues to provide. It's all structured in that way that you can raise taxes, you can do all those things. It's like, one of the interesting thing about one of Nate Hagen's kind of videos things that he says, is in all of his studies of economics and stuff, he has never seen an economist talk about that sort of environmental economics, the sort of energy economics in that way, because it's just presumed to be there.
Yeah.
Richard and I went on this online course for it was actually quite interesting on sort of on the economy as a planet. What does GDP look like as a planet? How do you then account for it and those sort of things? And it's good because it helps us. I mean, it helps you to start thinking about there is an integrality about this whole thing. And when we have clearly exceeded what's considered to be the planetary boundaries, assuming you believe them to be that, 6 out of 9 or whatever that number is.
Seven
out of. The fact that we're continuing on each year in the way we are is because we are eating into our own savings now. That's how we're managing to keep each year in that way. And if you look at households, if I look at people I know, my friends, and what they are doing, they're eating into their savings to go on the holidays, to go and do those things.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't do that. I'm trying not to do it as much, but I'm finding myself doing that as well. And so the path is I'm going to run out of those savings before I'm going to be able to make it back. That's the path we're on. That's why that's the path that led Richard and I back in sort of COVID time when we were thinking, let's skip this because, you know, as you said, you don't want to be poor.
No. It's been a fairly fundamental light of my whole life. It's no fun being poor.
And the basic part about ending up being poor is you keep eating up your savings without thinking about what you're really using them for.
Yeah. All right, Joe, I'm going to put you up and ask you, what were the other stories? What was at least one story that I put in the agenda today that you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
Oh dear, I haven't been keeping track of all the different stories.
Oh, sorry. Did you see the one about the I titled it "All Those Geniuses with Long-Term Thinking," which was talking about the majority of data centers are vulnerable to climate threats like floods and fires, study finds. I thought that would have got your attention.
Well, the thing that got me actually was the universality of the situation with the Louvre. You know how, you know, I think France intellectually likes to think in the long term. It does think about things that way, and I think the Louvre and the fact that it was closed because the environment they couldn't handle the environmental situation. The weather was too hot. It was just not designed for purpose, right? That says a lot because it has those, and I think Steve, you know, your significant other would very much appreciate the idea of the engineers trying their best to try and plan for the long term and make for things, you know, they think about the world and they can't foresee the world that we have today. At least they couldn't foresee the world that we have today. And so even a place like the Louvre was not able to stay open because it just wasn't seasonable. The French, you know, power grid also not being able to stay at full performance because of the same seasonality. And I think the same thing going for really, you know, like power, right? Because it's kind of the cyclical thing. You need the power to solve. Well, you know, according to the theory, you need the power to have all the compute to solve all the problems that will solve the problems.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I've just said I'll bring this all up because we're coming up to time, and Jess is probably sitting there thinking, God, you guys gabber on a lot. But there's always so much to go on to talk about like this. If you look at the agenda, there's so much that we didn't cover. I've included a piece from Jan Omsons, who was with us a couple of weeks ago talking about the El Nino. He's written a piece with Tom Harris, and it's quite complicated. The really big climate story, and it's basically he's always talking about how it's a domino effect. So the one thing happens, the next thing happens, the next thing happens. But the irony of this week, of course, is it's Climate Action Week in the UK, and a lot of the events have been cancelled because of climate. And Outrage and Optimism, which is a climate podcast, which is Christiana Figueres, who was one of the people who signed. Who was a big driver of the Paris Climate Agreement. They had to cancel a podcast in Bath, a recording, because it was too hot to do the recording. So there's been a lot of really interesting sort of ironies. But then I've heard that maybe irony isn't the right word. So I'll put it in the weekend reads. People are suggesting it could be other stuff. We've obviously got what's going on between US and Iran. There's lots of security stuff. I've just included one which is talking about coffee and beef. And the reality is where the percentage of the land that we're using to feed ourselves, we're coming up to the end of the ability to expand. But we live in a world where the big public companies who are a bit like the Cargill's beef type companies, right? So they have to keep expanding from a share perspective to increase their share price, but the actual physical capacity of Earth. It's not even the fact that we've destroyed the Earth. We've actually come to the end of our ability to expand. So to me, it's just another one of those short-term things. So there's a lot of stuff coming up. Bird flu also has finally landed in Australia, the last continent is now facing it. So lots of other things, but what's keeping you guys distracted? Jess, if you need to go, is there anything that you're doing, watching, listening to? Yeah, I think you're the only one hearing the noise, mate. Are you playing your oboe? How are you keeping yourself entertained when the world gets too serious? Oh, you're on mute.
You're mute.
Yeah, playing a variety of musical instruments, as many as possible. So I feel it's really important, to be honest, in this day and age when everything is digital, and we're all kind of trapped in these digital silos, aren't we? And bubbles, and so I think it's really important to keep it real, do stuff in the real physical world. So for me, that's about playing music. So I play the double bass, the oboe, saxophone, recorder, other stuff, guitar. But it's really interesting because I see my kids are really embracing this kind of digital disconnection, So my older daughter is buying vinyl, and DVDs, and disconnecting from everything, like really being really intentional about getting rid of social media. It's really, really interesting. It's great. So more of that. We've got to keep it real.
Yeah. And any way to get the
Prince
human connection.
clearly has a long lost relative in London.
That's cool. But oboe's your primary instrument, right?
Yes, probably. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I've played it, but I'm the best at it. But double bass is my current passion.
Nice, very cool. Nothing sexier than a female on a bass, I reckon. All right, Richard, what are you doing? I'm growing some tomatoes.
We quite like female saxophone players too. I'm in France at the moment. Our son turned 31 yesterday, so yes.
Happy birthday.
I'm sure he's very thankful. He's in Paris. It was an interesting moment, I think, weather-wise these last 2 days. And he said actually people wanted to be in the office because it's one of the few places that have aircon. So working from home was out the window. But I'm also embracing the whole physical thing. So I'm enlisted in the local pétanque tournament later, which is significantantly cooler here today. I mean, it's back to normal temperatures. And here it never got as hot as Paris. I mean, I'm in south coast of Brittany, so we got to 34, I think, at the worst point, which is hot enough for me. But I will be playing pétanque later.
But that's hot for Brittany, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
definitely.
So Ollie, I'm presuming, is saying there's nothing sexier than a female on a cello. I'm presuming. My niece used to play the cello, so I don't know. David?
Take that. Take that concert. Went to take that concert last night. My wife treated me. So that was fantastic, amazing. And it was at the Olympic Stadium, London 2012 Olympic Stadium. So lovely to be back there. And I had a thought. It made me realize when I was watching this concert that, you know my idea of Thrive Points and so on, is that, we wanted to get to the stage where we get all these musicians having concerts where people buy tickets with Thrive Coins. And just in case you don't know, Thrive Coins are made by leaving oil and gas and coal in the ground. And people do that either by saving energy or creating ventures or whatever it is. And so you get connected along with it, have a great time, get a great use for Thrive Coins in that way, and get something back for what you do.
I'm still trying to picture you dancing at a Take That concert, but were you there with your daughter?
I was there with my wife.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
What was interesting was there were loads of mother-daughters, with the mother being about in their 40s, 50s, and the daughter's kind of 20s sort of age group kind of mix. So obviously the mothers were fully into the Take That when they were at their height. And then their daughters, as they were growing up, probably listened to all the songs when they were kind of in primary school 5 years with their mothers, and they were all out there.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Joe.
Well, I've rather controversially have joined a LinkedIn activation pod, which is a group of people that agree to like, comment, and be supportive of each other's posts when they come on. And you probably have, well, some of you may know that I'm terrible at social media anyway to start with. So this has been rather hard work for me, and I've been thinking to myself that this is a full-time job. So I'm a bit busy doing that right now, trying to make that happen. I'm also trying to implement some real-life AI tools into my system, but there's a lot of overlap, which is causing me a bit of a headache as well. So I feel quite on the other end of the spectrum than Jessica, who's gone back to natural instruments. I'm actually going all digital and entangling myself in the wires.
I'm going to be launching a site where you can do you can search based on where you live for all of the risks that you face, and it links out to all the scientific and financial data and economics data and United Nations data, and basically you can say, I live in London, what are the risks I face? And it'll link to sea level rise, heat, civil issues based on other PM 2.5 levels, all that sort of stuff. So I'm doing a lot of the AI stuff too. But I watched a show and I thought it was new, but it's 2019 and it's called Tales of the City. It's Olivia Dukakis, Laura Linney, Elliot Page, and a bunch of other people. Have any of you guys seen it?
No.
No?
Is it about San
Mopan,
Francisco?
isn't it?
What's that?
Yeah, is that what it is? Is that the one? Amistad Mopan? Is it San Francisco? Amistad Mopan?
Yeah, based on those novels, yeah. And it's basically the story of queer lives in San Francisco. And it's around the central figure who's based on who Olivia Dukakis plays. But, before I moved to Thailand from Singapore was always very much censored. Like you could swearing, sex, nudity, you just never saw it. And since I've come back, it's no longer censored, but there's warnings, right? So I still find it weird seeing a penis on the TV in Singapore. And there's a lot of penises. But it is, it's a really, I think it's a really, it's an important show. And I think a lot of people would be really uncomfortable watching a lot of the stuff that's going on, especially sexually. But I think it's an important show I think there's enough room in the world for everybody to be themselves as long as they're not doing any harm to anyone else, right? And to me, understanding what it is like to live a queer life, I think we'd all do ourselves a favor to educate ourselves about it. And Olivia Dukakis's character goes back to the 60s when you could basically be killed by the cops just for dressing as a woman when you're a man. So anyway, Tales of the City. It challenges, but I think it's worth watching.
Yeah,
watching it on Netflix.
I just want to pick up on what you said about room in the world for people. Is the way I've been thinking is the step beyond that we actually need people to be the way that they are in order for us to go through the experience. Because if you think about that creates genuinely the ability to explore new ways and different ways. Otherwise, we're locked in a single conformist thinking. That's the most dangerous thing. So we actually need that, and I think of that as as the process of emergence.
We need everyone's view, and that's when you watch shows like this, and it goes back to television. Everybody on television is a white man. There was a time when that was the only face you ever saw on TV. I always say, who can't we see? Who aren't we seeing right now? Whose view aren't we hearing? and why aren't we hearing it? Ollie's suggesting we get Pup Tentacle on, but the problem is he's in the States, Ollie, so but it'll be like 3 o'clock in the morning for him. And I know he's fabulous talking about technology and solar panels and all sorts of stuff, but timing might be bad. Anyway, Jess, we're going to let you go. Thank you. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you
for giving us that insight into what's going on in the UK. For the rest of us, that news story has kind of moved on a little bit. I'm sure for you guys it hasn't moved on at all.
No.
No?
By the way,
not at
earthquakes,
all.
just to mention earthquakes. Just
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, there's a ring of fire going off.
Well, I mean, you know, a friend who works for one of the major insurance companies, was making the comment that they see the connection between kind of climate and earthquakes, and they see earthquakes activities increasing massively, and I've often thought that too, and I think it's coming along.
It's been the science is fascinating around that, you know, just glacial melt, you know, when the earth is moving based on just what we're putting on it, like buildings and stuff, but also now we've got glacial melt, you know, Greenland's going to rise once all that ice goes off it, you know, so it's going to have an impact on the plates. So yeah, anyway, Jess has obviously jumped off, and we tried to cover a lot of things today. I don't know if David's going to come back and join us, but I know he's going to the dentist.
We've done our best, and we've gone through a lot as usual.
Yeah. And we appreciate everyone being here, all the comments. Ollie, good to see you again. We'll get you back on again at some point. We're coming up to the end of the season. We've got a few weeks left. We've got a cyber insurance security guy, and we've got a China expert as well, and we're still hoping on a Russia expert. Yeah. I think we've got 3 more shows. So if we could get those 3 in before we finish, and then I'm ready for a break. Sometimes the weight of the world is heavy, right?
It is.
Interestingly, Russia is the one country that benefits from climate change because a lot of its frozen regions become productive.
And that's why I'm convinced that China is still friends with Russia.
Yep. So it's worth bearing in mind. Whilst Europe will find itself under increasing stress, Russia will find that more and more of its regions will become productive.
Yeah, especially with the permafrost melt. But at the same time, the release of methane from that melt and CO2 is, you know.
Oh, it'll hurt everyone else. It's not at all implying that this is not going to hurt everyone else.
Yeah.
Right. Russia's going to be like that colleague who's just broken wind and feeling much more comfortable about it.
Nice. Yes. Nice. So everyone should learn some Russian.
Lovely, Joe. Lovely.
Exactly. All right. We'll see you all next week. We're going to talk. What is it? Cyber insurance, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Cyber insurance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed.
And why it's important. All right. We'll see you guys.
Yeah. See you.
Take care. Have a good weekend.
Thanks for watching.